Good evening, and welcome to Storytime with Pastor. The story that we're reading is a fairy tale by George MacDonald called The Light Princess. And I'm going to read to you chapter 5, which I actually read last night, but it for some reason didn't record. And rather than go on to the next chapters or include this, I'm just going to read chapter 5 to you. But I want to ask you for some feedback. If you're enjoying it, let me know. If you have questions about it, let me know. I will tell you that in chapter 5, one of the things I love about George MacDonald's fairy tales is they're not only enjoyable. I enjoy the back and forth and the interactions between people. It's always very clever. I love the overall themes and stories, but it's just amazing how rich they are with unexpected advice. And this is one of those. I mean, when you have a problem and you're not sure how to solve that problem, how do you interact with the people that you care about the most? In a pleasant way or in an unpleasant way? How do you work together to solve problems? How do you comfort one another? In this chapter, the king and queen, what we had in the last chapter is we heard how the hired help, the people in the castle, the servants loved the princess. They loved literally using her as a ball, floating through the air. They push her back and forth, almost like when you play with a balloon in the air. Their only caution was not to hit her so high that they couldn't reach her up in top of the high ceilings. But they loved her. They loved that aspect of it, but they loved her as well. She's always laughing. She's not only light in that gravity doesn't affect her, but she's light-hearted too. She's always laughing. She's always giggling. Can you imagine a baby that's always cooing and giggling? That'll get interesting as she gets older. We're not going to get there today, though. Instead, we're going to go from downstairs where the servants were enjoying the little girl to upstairs, seeing how, as parents and as king and queen, these challenges are stressing them out, and how that stress affects their relationship. You'll see them acting not very nice towards one another, and you also see them trying to comfort one another. And I hope as you see it, you'll probably see yourselves as well. Right. So, chapter 5 of The Light Princess by George MacDonald. The chapter is called "What Is to Be Done." But above stairs, it was different. One day, for instance, after breakfast, the king went into his counting house and counted out his money. The operation gave him no pleasure. "To think," said he to himself, "that every one of these gold sovereigns weighs 1/4 of an ounce, and my real, live, flesh and blood princess weighs nothing at all." And he hated his gold sovereigns as they lay with a broad smile of self-satisfaction all over their yellow faces. At the same time, the queen was in the parlor eating bread and honey, but at the second mouthful she burst out crying and could not swallow it. The king heard her sobbing. Glad of anybody, especially of his queen, to quarrel with, he clashed his gold sovereigns into his money box, clapped his crown on his head, and rushed into the parlor. "What is all this about?" exclaimed he. "What are you crying for, queen?" "I can't eat it," said the queen, looking ruefully at the honey pot. "No wonder," retorted the king. "You've just eaten your breakfast, 2 turkey eggs and 3 anchovies." "Oh, that's not it," sobbed Her Majesty. "It's my child, my child." "Well, what's the matter with your child? She's neither up the chimney nor down the draw-well. Just hear her laughing," said His Majesty. Yet the king could not help a sigh, which he tried to turn into a cough, saying, It's a good thing to be light-hearted, I am sure, whether she be ours or not." "It is a bad thing to be light-headed," answered the queen, looking with prophetic soul far into the future. "'Tis a good thing to be light-handed," said the king. "'Tis a bad thing to be light-fingered," answered the queen. "'Tis a good thing to be light-footed," said the king. "'Tis a bad thing," began the queen, but the king interrupted her. "In fact," said he, with the tone of one who concludes an argument, in which he has had only imaginary opponents, and in which, therefore, he has come off triumphant. In fact, it is a good thing altogether to be light-bodied, but it is a bad thing altogether to be light-minded, retorted the queen, who is beginning to lose her temper. This last answer quite discomforted his majesty, who turned on his heel and betook himself again to his counting house. But he was not halfway towards it when the voice of his queen overtook him. "And it is a bad thing to be light-haired," screamed she, determined to have more last words, now that her spirit was roused. The queen's hair was black as night, and the king's had been, and his daughter's was as golden as morning. But it was not this reflection of his hair that arrested him. It was the double use of the word light, for the king hated all witticisms, and punning especially. And besides, he could not tell whether the queen meant light-haired or light-aired. For why might she not aspirate her vowels when she was exasperated herself? He turned upon his other heel and rejoined her. She looked angry still, because she knew that she was guilty, or, what was much the same, knew that he thought so. "My dear queen," said he, "duplicity of any sort is exceedingly objectionable between married people of any rank, not to say kings and queens, and the most objectionable form duplicity can assume is that of punning." "There," said the queen. "I never made a jest, but I broke it in the making. I am the most unfortunate woman in the world." She looked so rueful that the king took her in his arms, and they sat down to consult. "Can you bear this?" said the king. "No, I cannot," said the queen. "Well, what's to be done?" said the king. "I'm sure I don't know," said the queen. "But might you not try an apology?" "To my old sister, I suppose you mean," said the queen. "Yes," said the queen. "Well, I don't mind," said the king. So he went the next morning to the house of the princess, and making a very humble apology, begged her to undo the spell. But the princess declared, with a grave face, that she knew nothing at all about it. Her eyes, however, showed pink, which was a sign that she was happy. She advised the king and queen to have patience and to mend their ways. The king returned discomforted. The queen tried to comfort him. We will wait. We will wait until she is older. She may then be able to suggest something herself. She will at least know how she feels and explain things to us." "But what if she should marry?" exclaimed the king, in sudden consternation at the idea. "Well, what of that?" rejoined the queen. "Well, just think, if she were to have children. In the course of 100 years, the air might be as full of floating children as of gossamers in autumn." "Well, that is no business of ours," replied the queen. "Beside, by that time they will have learned to take care of themselves." A sigh was the king's only response. He would have consulted the court physicians, but he was afraid that they would try experiments on her. This is the end of chapter 5. We'll see you again tomorrow as we read, I think, chapters 6 and 7. And I just want to do a quick shout out before I end. This particular chapter I dedicate to my dear friend, Pastor and Dr. Martin Noland. God bless you all. Have a great evening.